Italy? Whiskey? Ah, Italy, look at the never lucky my secret. Oh no, Mr. Suddenly. Hello, Libby. Let's begin. Indeed.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and this is the Fireside Chat. And I have the esteemed pleasure of our guest, who is Major Clarence Anderson III. It's like the whole name there, which is great. I think it's great. I love the long names. As a Latino, we always have long names. So, and you have a crazy story, like so many in that we've been talking to lately. And so yeah, first off, welcome to the show, Major. And how are you doing today? How are you? How's your day going?
Well, Brian, first of all, man, thank you for having me, and thank you for just helping us to tell our story, man. I've been saying this for the past decade or so. This has been a national security issue. And the moment someone kind of looks at it like that, if you look at recruiting numbers, right? Recruiting numbers from, I think they've been the worst since the Vietnam era. So not only do we have going on and this been swept under the rug, you also have retention issues. So folks aren't joining the military and they're exiting as soon as possible. And so, so just thank you for doing that. I'm good, man. I'm working, able to, find, it was hard initially, but I was able to, supply chain logistics guy, there's always a need for somewhere. So, but it's been challenging. I'm grateful for the change with regards to Trump actually looking, appointing Pete Hegseth to be the SecDef, because had it not been, and we would have still had, another. And I'm an independent guy. I'm not here to talk politics. But,
no, yeah. for sure. We'll get into that because I do want to know what your thoughts are with the sort of like shifting landscape, let's say, in the Pentagon and all that. But before we get too far afield, I want people that are watching to see what are we talking about here. So you have just tell me a little bit about your story, how you like where did all this begin? So you experienced a false allegation. That's kind of what the core of this is. So like as men's issues advocates here at Honey Badger Radio, we think that like there's a list of things that need to be discussed and addressed and talked about. But one of the big ones, at least one of the ones that no one wants to talk about, are false allegations, specifically against men. But more than that is the lack of due process. So, and I think your story is unique for that. So why don't you tell us all, like, what's your story? Like what happened with, to put you in the situation you're in now?
Sure. So it all started with my second wife. We're both from the similar hometowns, both went to college together. I met her, linked back up with her when I was a captain. I had an early command billet back here in Alabama at Maxwell Air Force Base. So we both attended Troy University, linked up at homecoming. We were married about 4 months after we started dating. I deployed, came back. And so that's how we ended up in a relationship. And so fast forward about 5 years after that, we're looking at about 2013. I got selected for command again at Holloman Air Force Base.
So were you out of curiosity, you're in the Air Force, was this like a career thing for you, or was it just like like some people go career, some people just do it for the grant or whatever?
By this point, I'm like 14, 15 years in. And so it was a career for me. I was up for Lieutenant Colonel. I was moving right along second time in command. And so we are stationed at Holloman Air Force Base, 2013. I just, kicked ass at a CENTCOM tour I was working with SOCOM. I was a division chief for Special Operations Command Central. Took part in the team. I was on the back end of the team that killed Osama bin Laden. We had the SOCOM guys, soft guys
Wow.
doing that. There was a logistics entity at the other end of it that made that successful. And so, man, just killing it, man. And so I hadn't even put on lieutenant colonel yet. So I was a major. Got picked up for command again at Holloman Air Force Base, just crushing it. And so you started to see a shift in the perceptions of the way Congress were going. And so initially, the military was getting a bad rap under the initial Iraqi time in early thousands, maybe, or whenever OIF kicked off, where there were a lot of domestic violence, sexual assault cases being swept under the rug. And so President Obama came in saying, hey, we're going to, finally address these things. And so if he was right, if those things were happening, being swept under the rug, by all means, let's address it. But unfortunately, what President Obama did was he moved the pendulum from we're not looking at anything to, if someone makes an accusation, we're going to believe them. And not only are we going to believe everything they're saying, we're going to eliminate the investigation part of it where, we're not going to be looking for the facts. We're going to look for, hey, how can we corroborate this happened? And then, by the way, we're going to send everything to court martial. You're going to go to court martial, and then allow the process to kick off. And so, so fast forward, I was squad commander.
The system turned to a hammer looking for nails. So
absolutely. There was
Go ahead. No, it's all right.
Yeah. And there's a matter of fact Air Force case, and I'll get back to mine in a second. Brandon T. Wright versus Air Force. Brandon T. Wright his case was his convenient authority, which is a 3-star, had already pushed back on another lieutenant colonel's court martial and said, no, this is bogus. This didn't happen. Because at the time, convenient authorities are pretty much the generals that are in charge of your military court martials, right? And so that 3-star at the time had already said this crime. Convenient had the authority to, after a case went to trial and the convenient authority thought, no, this is BS, the convenient authority could toss it out. Even the jury at the court martial found someone guilty, right? And so he had already done that in the lieutenant colonel's case. The airman case, he was getting ready to do convenient authority duties. And so the Judge Advocate General of the Air Force at the time, Richard C. Harding, Lieutenant General Harding, got involved and said, hey, look, the Air Force policy at this time is victims will be believed and all for the trial. And if you don't, that's going to put a target on that. And so not only was the Judge Advocate General guilty of unlawful command influence, at the time, Secretary of the Air Force, Deborah Lee James, got caught up in that, who ironically, she's still an advisor. Well, last time I checked, she's an advisor of the Air Force. And so that was the background of the policy that, was substantiated by orders from the Judge Advocate General of the Air Force, who at the time was a top prosecutor, right? So
the Judge Advocate General, what does the Judge Advocate General do typically? What is the function of that position?
So they are the top prosecutors in each service, right? So they are the ones who assign judges. They are the ones who assign where your judge advocate attorneys go within the service. They are the top cop.
This is for the internal. Yeah, but it's internal Air Force stuff. It's kind of like internal affairs for the. Okay.
Yeah. Well, each service, with the exception of the Marines, has a Judge Advocate General, which is a 3-star billet, except for the Marines. So obviously the Marines fall under the Department of the Navy. So the Air Force has a Judge Advocate General 3-star. Army does, and so does the Navy, right? Coast Guard has something equivalent to that, but it's that's along the same line. So Judge Advocate General is equivalent to your Attorney General over a state, right? So your Attorney General over a state is a top cop. You know what I'm saying? And so, the top prosecutor. That's what they are. And so that's the guidance he passed on. And so fast forward now, every commander that's in charge is saying we're stamping everything. Everything's going to trial. So in my case, I was a squadron commander. My wife was a school teacher. She was. We had just moved to Holloman Air Force Base in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and so she started being another school teacher. Started having an affair, and so when I found out about our force, and I get awarded custody of our girl. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So no, initially, and in family court, accusations get tossed out all the time, right? So, when you're fighting for custody or fighting for property, accusations get tossed all the time. Judge didn't believe it. She had a criminal record that we were able to disclose. So all these things came up during the divorce, right? So she is pissed. Not only are you custody of the kid, now I gotta pay this guy child support. Oh hell no, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what her and her mother did, they called my wing leadership and so now they're taking advantage of this Obama policy that he placed through the service secretary down to the advocate general, right? All victims will be believed, all accusations go to court martial. And my wife accused me with evidence, no nothing. I sex assaulted wife while we were married, right? So she throws it on me, and it sticks.
Let me just repeat this real quick for the people that are listening, because you're breaking up a little bit, but I understood what you said. So
okay,
you had a wife. She was a school teacher. You were in the military. She cheated on you. This is like where this was crazy. So she's having an affair. You file for divorce. When you find out, you get the kids, right? And then your wife, because she was gonna have to pay child support, right? Because she lost the kids and she was gonna pay child support. And instead of doing that, she decided to collude with your mother-in-law, her mother, and accuse you of sexual assault, which I guess the claim is that you fondled her breasts and penetrated her digitally.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You did eat her. And that, because they didn't go to the criminal courts or the civilian courts, they took it to the military courts, and the military courts they don't even their standards are completely different. Is that fair to say, to describe? Okay.
Well, yes, sir. Well, there aren't any standards. Matter of fact, there was and let me know if I sound choppy. I'll certainly read some things. A matter of fact, it was a judicial panel called the JPP, which they were established in roughly July. I'm sorry, they were 2013 is when they were established, and this was by the National Defense Authorization Act at that time. And so they established a panel of civilians, and they later became the DAC IPAD, but they were the JPP initially. Group of civilians, attorneys, judges, going around to military installations, looking at, hey, how's the military doing with sexual assault cases? And so the biggest finding at that time, this is in the report came out, I want to say 2016, that military are prosecuting cases with no probable cause, right? And so, in the civilian side, well, first of all, the American Bar Association says if you are an attorney, right, in the United States, that's adjudicated by the American Bar Association, you cannot prosecute a case with no probable cause. Well, the military is prosecuting cases with no probable cause. That was the huge finding from that. And so for the non-legal people, probable cause is basically the statute that says there's a probability that the accusation happened, right? And so therefore you can prosecute a case like that. If there's no probability that the accusation happened, you cannot prosecute this case. So that's why a lot of these cases are getting prosecuted in the military, because they are saying to hell with the American Bar Association standard. We're going to prosecute these cases. And so my hit is against these officers. Looks like we're freezing again.
No, a little bit, but you're good.
Okay. So my hit is against these JAG officers, right? So what's going on is, instead of these JAG complaints to the American Bar Association saying, hey, the military is making us prosecute these cases no probable cause to potentially make me lose my law license, they're being quiet, getting out of the military and representing the service members in these cases to get money. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a cash cow. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so know this, right? They know this, right? And so I filed a human rights complaint to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, kind of got swept under the rug. And so that was one of the complaints I had. JAG attorneys, if you know the military is making you do this, right? And it's a violation of your oath to office, because the oath says you shall support and defend the Constitution. Well, there's an element in the Constitution called due process, right? And so whether you are a JAG attorney or an officer,
100%.
a convenience or three-star, you have a duty to the Constitution. And so if service members, your service is making you obey the Constitution, you have an oath, you have a right to do something about it. And so so that's number one. So to piggyback, yes, my wife. So after that happened, she accused me of rubbing her breast and visually penetrating her and anything else that can stick to the wall. And Andrew, the insult is we had law enforcement officials testify at my court martial. We were talking police officers that they've investigated it and none of this ever happened. So
well, here's I got just a strange question. Okay, so like I'm married, and I do occasionally rub my wife's breasts as well. So like when she makes, so what I'm saying is that the allegation doesn't sound like assault unless you change the context. So is she saying that this happened? Like, was there like a time frame that she's claiming? Because it feels like this on its own should not, you know, stand up to scrutiny, because if you were married, then you were intimate at some point, you know, right? I mean,
well, so here's what the law says. The law says that if you're a married couple, you have what you have called implied consent, right? Like if I'm dating somebody, or if I go to a party and there's a woman passed out drunk on the bed, I can't start fondling her because there's no implied consent because we're not married, right? But what the law says is that your wife can be drunk, passed out, and because she's your wife, you have consent, right? So what happened with me is my wife says that I tried to do these things to her and she told me, oh, this is rape. You got to stop. I continue to do it. Now, it never happened. There's no evidence of it happening. It never happened. But she just says, okay, this is something, and you know, and her mother was on the council locally at a military, it's called Fort Rucker, it's called Fort Noble. So her mother's well involved with the military laws and the rules with regards to hot button items. And so that's why the mom was on the phone call with my wife, calling my base leadership saying, hey, you know, my son-in-law sexually assaulted my daughter, and what are you guys going to do about this? All right. And so not only that, but she was threatening to go to the local media saying that the military wasn't doing anything about it. And so it was so get this, Brian, right before trial. So not only did my wife make the accusation, but she was pregnant. She got pregnant by this guy. You know what I'm saying? So not only did she have the affair, she got pregnant by the guy.
My goodness.
You know? And so, yeah, man, it's just, look, this is a Tyler Perry movie in the making. You know, I'm going to figure out who's going to play you in the movie. Probably.
Play me?
Somebody.
George Lopez. No, I don't know. No.
Yeah, so
go ahead. I'll go with John Stamos, I think, but.
We'll do that. I can see that. I used to get that
when I was a
kid. So right before trial, my wife says, look, if you give me custody of our daughter, I won't testify at your court martial, right? These are text messages between her divorce attorney and my divorce attorney. Brian, I take these text messages, I submit them to the prosecutor, we submit them to my convening authority, and the feedback I got was, we'll bring it up in trial. I'm like, damn, like, hey, this is motive, right? I still want you to go through with this court martial? And so, look, so I'm thinking, okay, there's no way in hell I'm going to go jury, because I also know that a lot of times these guys who sit on as a jury, they're thinking, well, you got to be guilty of something because you're court martial, right? I didn't want to go with that. I'm going to go judge alone, because the judge wants to know the law, know all these things, right? Now, hell, I know at the time that President Obama, through the service secretaries, had told the Advocate General, told all the judges who were over all these court martials that, hey, if he said, she said case, the credibility goes to victim. So my case was completely, he said, she said. So I know what I was doing, right? And so the judge found me guilty and sentenced me to 42 months in the military prison. Now, come on, Brian. I was never ever arrested. Okay, never. And so the bar to get an arrest is low, right? The bar to get a conviction is high, you know, beyond reasonable doubt. So I'm thinking, how the hell, if I don't even meet the bar to get an arrest, how the hell do I meet the bar to get a conviction? You know?
Yeah. Let me read that bit. I like that you have on the website, which is linked below. You guys can check it out. All of the stuff that is involved with this case and all of the like complaint letters and everything. It's very, very concise. But I want to read this one bit because this is insane. Okay, so look at this. So Major Anderson, in April 2015, you were court-martialed, stemming from accusations like we talked about. At this time, the Judge Advocate General of the Air Force, Lieutenant General Richard C. Harding, passed guidance to military judges that all victims are to be believed and their cases referred to trial, with no pretrial confinement, no physical evidence against Anderson, and civilian police officers testifying at trial. There was no evidence of any crime. So there were cops saying that there's no evidence of any crime at the trial. Doesn't matter. Judge alone panel still found you guilty and sentenced you to 42 months in prison. Prior to that, this I don't know if you got to this bit, but this is where it gets interesting to me. His wife offered a bribe that if Major Anderson gave her full custody of her daughter, then she would forego testifying at trial. So she was willing to like not send you to jail if you gave her custody of your kid. This bribe violated federal law. 18 U.S.C. 201, bribing witnesses and public officials, which strictly forbids anyone offering something of value to testimony in a federal proceeding. You declined her offer and presented the evidence to his convening authority, but this violation of federal law with overwhelming evidence of motive to fabricate accusations were ignored. After trial, it was also discovered that the mother-in-law paid the man his wife had an affair with $100,000.
But you gotta do like Dr. Evil, 100,000. Yes,
$100,000.
yes.
Prior to his testimony about his relationship with Anderson's wife. So your wife, your mom-in-law, and the guy your wife was sleeping with, or your ex-wife, they all colluded, and they tried to, like, is this just about the custody, or is there some vindictive thing going on? I mean, I guess you can't really know, and it doesn't really matter. Right. But yeah, like $100,000, and then you posted, you were awarded a post-trial hearing to evaluate the $100,000 payment after U.S. Congresswoman Martha Roby submitted a congressional to the Air Force on the payment. The Air Force told Congresswoman Roby, the military judge, have full authority to order a new trial or dismiss the charges at the post-trial hearing. But when witnesses at the post-trial hearing perjured themselves, the Air Force reneged on what was told to Congresswoman Roby and refused to allow Anderson's attorneys to file a motion for a new trial, saying the judge was not authorized.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what happened. So, so the fix is in, right? You can't. If anybody wants to know at the highest level service, the fix is in. Look at my case, right? Because so here's how the process works. Once there's a congressional, it goes through a special office at headquarters at Air Force for them to sort it through. The Air Force secretary signs off on it. So at the time, you got a service member in a high-profile case who there's evidence of witness tampering, right? And so my mom goes to DC. God, man, if it wasn't for my mom, I definitely would be lost, man. So my mom goes to DC, and so she takes a recorded conversation, right? So first, when I'm incarcerated, we get found guilty. We heard through my ex's side of the family money that was drained to the guy, right? And so my mom says, "Okay, I'm gonna call this guy and just see what he's saying." Persons are being recorded. And so my mom calls him. He spills the beans, right? Because now she's giving him hell over their kids. So he's feeling terrible about what happened, and so he's ready to talk. So initially, I could not admit the affair as motive during my court martial because both of them lied and said that they weren't sleeping together until we were divorced. And so the judge was like, "Well, we can't admit this under the rape shield protection issues. I can't admit this because it has nothing to do with the accusation at the specific time." And so we found out. So my mom calls him. He admits to lying up when the affair started. Now, you know what I'm saying? Then he also says, "Well, her mom paid me $10,000 to do this." Right? So that's what he said on a recorded phone call. So my mother, we transcribed the conversation that was recorded, took it to my local courthouse. They certified it, transcribed it. I gave a copy of that plus a recording to the Air Force, and I gave a copy of that plus recording to my congresswoman. So she takes it, says, "Okay, submits the the Air Force. Air Force, okay, here's what we're going to do. Major Anderson's case is not yet final. We are going to have a post-trial hearing, and the judge at that post-trial hearing has full authority to rule on any motion that Major Anderson's attorney submit, whether it be a motion for a new trial, a motion to dismiss. Now get this, Brian. Here's the crux of it. I think my case is the only case, federal case, where you have suspected people committed of a crime testify and there's no investigation to go with it, right? And so the Air Force was like, okay, and the judge was like, we're just gonna take their word for it that everything they're saying is true. But I'm like, hold on, shouldn't we look at text messages? Shouldn't we be looking at emails? Can we get the FBI to look at this? Because even though they're civilians, I know OSI and the regular military investigators can't do anything. What about the feds? Can we get the FBI to look at this? Air Force was like, hell no, we ain't trying to get a conviction. We just want to make it look like we're giving you due process. So that was the first part of it. So then when we get forward, both of them, my ex-wife now and her boyfriend and the mother says, no, it wasn't $10,000, it was $100,000. And we're like, what? But they said, but we only gave it, to him, to remodel his house, and I'm like, well, just that alone should be issues. I said, because if I'd have known this, I probably would have went with a jury panel so they could hear this, right? And so the judge was like, well, I don't have any authority to do anything. And I'm just here as a fact finder to hear the facts and that be it and give it to the Court of Appeal. And so that response to my congresswoman that the Air Force gave her, that the judge had full authority, I didn't get that until 4 months after my post-trial hearing, right? And so the judge like, I can't do nothing, give it to the Court of Appeals, let them work with it. And so my mother had went back to DC, sat back down with Congresswoman Roby. Congresswoman Roby's like, well, I don't know why they told you that. Here's what they told me in this letter. And I'm like, I'll be damned. If we would have had this letter at my post-trial hearing, we would have been like, hold on, government. You guys are full of shit because you've already conceded to Congress that the judge has full authority, So that's what happened in the military side of things. So they rubber stamped the conviction, Brian. Court of Appeals didn't want to hear it because now, because think about this. Deborah Lee James, the previous Secretary of the Air Force, had already got called, slapped on the hand for unlawfully influencing that Airman Brandon T. Wright case. So now you've got followed up with, now she's also involved with lying to Congress. Oh, that would have completely undid all of this. And so they rubber stamped my case because they didn't want that to be known. And matter of fact, if you look at the Air Force Court of Criminal Appeals findings, they mentioned nothing about the congressional to Martha Roby at all, And so, now get this, I filed a federal lawsuit in the 4th Federal District Court, DC, because the federal courts, if you're wrong to the military, the federal courts can remedy and fix what the military does to you. So I filed a federal lawsuit in Alexandria, Virginia, the 4th Federal District, because Alexandria is where the Pentagon is, right? And so I'll be damned, they got to the federal judge, right? So the federal judge ruled, this was in February of 2020, Brian, he ruled that, well, this recorded phone call that you're alleging, that you're saying happened, well, we don't see anywhere in the record that you ever submitted this to the Air Force during your appeals. And I'm like, what? I got a post-trial hearing because of this. What are you talking about? So I submitted several reconsideration motions to the judge. Matter of fact, I went on One American News to talk about this, and my story on One American News.
I watched the video.
President Trump's attention. Yeah. That interview is what got President Trump's attention, where he ultimately offered me the pardon that I told his office.
Really?
Look,
so wait. So let's back up a little bit. So because you sent a letter, you petitioned Biden for a new trial, and there was a petition. It's linked on your website. It's the first.
I think it's the first link on there. Yeah.
Yep. It's the first link on there, and I'm gonna read it really quick. It's not long, but I'll read it for the audience. So you petitioned President Biden. What year did you do that? I mean, I assume it was when he was in office. I think it was June of 2022. I think. February 1st, 2022. Okay, yeah. February 1st, 2022. So literally, 3 years ago. And you said, Dear President Biden, I write to request your support in ordering a new trial for Major Clarence Anderson III, whose military court-martial was allegedly plagued with unlawful influence and prosecutorial misconduct
Hey, Brian, I think that letter was from my congressman, I think.
Oh, okay.
Barry
Yeah,
Moore,
it
I
is.
believe.
Barry
Yeah,
Moore.
yeah.
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 As
Yeah.
you may know, on April 22nd, 2015, Major Anderson was convicted of sexual assault and other related charges in a general court-martial trial. Since his conviction, Major Anderson has maintained his innocence and produced accounts of alleged bribery, evidence suppression, and witness tampering throughout his court-martial, military appeal, and federal appeal. The Air Force Inspector General has reviewed the case. However, Major Anderson has produced documentation that he believes proves wrongdoing. I respectfully request that you consider ordering a new trial to ensure that Major Anderson is presented with a chance to prove his innocence. I am confident that your support would help bring about a timely conclusion to Major Anderson's efforts. I'm laughing because that's obviously not what happened. If you or your staff have questions regarding this request, please do not hesitate to contact my chief of staff, Shayna T. Chan, and then there's a phone number. So you did do a petition. I assume you didn't hear anything, and hence why you are now. So that didn't go anywhere. What happened specifically with? Oh, go ahead.
So there's one better. So you got that letter, and then in June, go to the top of my page. There's a link where my congressman,
DOJ investigation.
You're
requesting.
So do that, and then later go back and say, "Hey, President Biden, since you're not going to do anything, how about you give this case to the Department of Justice?" Right. So that letter was on the 20th of 2022, and so here's what Biden did. Right. So the backdrop is President Trump's already being indicted down in Florida for everything that happened with regards to accusations against him and Ukraine and Georgia, right? And so in the backdrop, he's getting ready to be indicted. My Congress submits the request to President Biden requesting the Department of Justice look up the case. Biden says, no, we're not doing that. So, and the reason why Biden said no is because you don't. So anytime there's an investigator from the DOJ, they have jurisdiction. If you look at Bill Clinton, right? Bill Clinton, the DOJ was supposed to be looking at accusations of when he was governor during Whitewater, right? Or something to that effect. And so the DOJ jurisdiction, well, if we find one criminal conduct, we can keep looking and keep looking and keep looking. And so talking about Monica Lewinsky, how you go from as a governor to we're talking about Monica Lewinsky with semen on her dress, right? And Bill Clinton made him burn against that. So Biden didn't want the DOJ and independent because it's going to go back and says,
go back just a little bit. I don't know if it's because your voice is moving a little far away from your microphone and the phone is trying to keep up, or maybe your connection, but go on where you were saying about Monica Lewinsky's dress. That's where we left off.
Right. So Brian, my problem. So what I'm saying was Biden didn't want an independent investigator from the Department of Justice case, just like with Bill Clinton, they had an independent investigator. If I'm still breaking up, let me know.
So far, so good.
Okay. And so the independent investigator and President Clinton was supposed to be looking at what happened to him as governor, but they find a criminal conduct, and it ended ultimately with him being questioned about Monica Lewinsky, right? And so once a lot of criminal issues, they can keep investigating that. And so President Biden didn't want the because he knew that him and President Obama gave lawful order to the service secretary and to the judge advocate generals. So what Biden did in that letter, the first letter you saw, which is June 2022, requested the DOJ, he got to the Air Force. I was going to give it to the Air Force, let them investigate themselves. Well, of course they didn't find anything wrong,
Yeah. Maybe try turning your camera off. It might be an issue of like too much data going out. Maybe your audio will be better. And I don't want to take away your pretty face, but let's try turning the camera off and see if that makes your sound better.
Okay, let me figure this out, man. My apologies.
Oh no, it's okay. It's like these things happen. We're just like working with tech. Like you said, the evolution will be televised.
No, I can if you call you back my laptop, but that's gonna break everything we've already started, right? So let me.
No, it's okay. I'll just try turning off your camera and see if that in Zoom you might be able to just go into your video settings. Yep, just stop the video, and then now now you can still hear me, right?
I can. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you just fine. This might work
Okay.
better. Maybe it's just because your phone's doing too
Okay.
much. So okay.
Okay.
So you sent a request for the DOJ to investigate. Did that bear any fruit?
No, sir. President Biden says, because the backdrop was President Trump was getting ready to be indicted down in Florida, and for the insurrection, all that stuff, right? Because that would have been one case that could actually not allow him to run for president, right? Because unless it says Constitution says anybody can run unless you are found guilty of insurrection or something like that. And so Biden didn't want an independent investigator looking into my case, because that would ultimately mean that independent investigators started asking questions like, okay, well, who gave this order? Well, then so they're gonna start talking to service secretaries. Well, who gave you this order? Well, someone from the executive branch. Okay, who was it from the executive? So Biden didn't want that, and so that's why he said, I'm trying to win this election. Air Force, you guys take a look at this and say nothing happened, and so this guy can go away. And that's what happened. So nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, like I can see that. So you, man, this is wild. So let's fast forward to like more recent history. You said that President Trump is considering a pardon for you. Is that what you were trying to get to that point? So did you? Okay, go ahead. What happened next?
So in June of, in 2020, my case, I go on One American News. I work with the Justice for Wars Caucus. I get linked up with an attorney from the Justice for Wars Caucus. Congressman Louis Gohmert was phenomenal in helping me out. And so through all those efforts, it comes back that, hey, there's a pardon offer. And so at the time President Trump had already got involved with Major Matthew Goldstein, who was an Army Ranger, who was an Army Green Beret, and First Lieutenant Clint Lorance. So he had already gave executive action for those guys. And so it came back that he's looking to do it for me. I says, look, I don't want that. Can we just get a new trial? Okay, let's just do a new trial. That way I can present all this evidence, And so the process, there were efforts in place to order the new trial, and then January happens, right? And so my point of contact in the White House answering our phone calls. And so the January 6th incident at the Capitol thwarted all the efforts for me to get a new trial. And so fast forward, Joe Biden is the president for the next 4 years. You see how we try to reach out to him, didn't do anything. So now that President Trump is back in office, the angle is still to, okay, sir, refresh his memory who I am. And so that's currently, from my understanding, being worked out now. Because because we talk to artists, most folks, everybody kind of wants things to go away. No, I want these bastards to be brought back to trial. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I want to have a court martial. Let's bring in the current chief of staff, General Brown, who was just fired the other day. Let's bring back the service secretaries. I want everybody under oath to say what they did.
Do you think that okay, so let's go back to the conviction. So what is on your record right now? Do you, because I've spoken to people that they got court-martialed, they lose their veteran status, they have to go on a registry, like what kind of or they just have, like, they're basically considered an ex-con. What are
all the above, Brian? All the above. So I have a conviction record. I registered sex offender. And yes to all of those things. Once a quarter, because I'm in Alabama, I gotta register locally. So I have to go and register at the city and the county that I live in every 3 months. I got to pay a $10 fine every time I register. Now you're talking about a guy who had a top secret security clearance, right? Who was vetted, who was in command, who took part in keeping our country safe. And this is what happens when you decide to fight for not only your Constitution, what's in the Constitution, but hell, fight for your kid. You know, if I would have given my wife custody, none of this would have happened. But I couldn't do that, man.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. So like, okay, so you're so all of the above, and all of this on like, not, I mean, it's not even a preponderance of evidence, like no evidence. And so like, where do you think, and I know that Arvis has talked about this and we've talked about this for years, but why do you think the system is the way it is right now, like in terms of how, you know, these things can be exploited? I know that well, I'll just let you tell me what you think, where this comes from.
I think the big reason is we have senior officers who are cowards, right? And you kind of, every now and then they'll act like they have a spine. Remember when President Trump was in office, he was like, all right, if you are LGBTQ, you can't serve. And the military pushed back and we're like, no, sir, we can't do that, right? Well, we needed that same courage when they were passing these laws to say, look, no probable cause, victims will be believed. And so generals and these service secretaries should have pushed back and said, no, if we do these things, this is a violation of due process and we can't do that, right? So the first problem how it happened is because you have folks in senior positions were cowards and didn't want to push back, right? Number one. Secondly, what's happened is you've had an element in Congress who have, you know, forgotten their vows to the Constitution, right? Because, you know, if you are a congressman or a senator, you have a vow to the Constitution, right? So they submitted, they've turned a blind eye to what they're supposed to be doing, which is supporting and defending the Constitution. And so even though the Constitution has given members of Congress the authority to, you know, the power of the purse and to draft laws, they still have to be lawful. And so what happens is you have the likes of like a Senator LeBrand or the Senator Claire McCaskill out of Missouri, right? It's a lot of folks who sit on the Armed Services Committee who draft these laws because they want to get elected in the district. So like, hey, I'm showing that I'm tough on military sexual assault, so can you please reelect me for another 6 years, right? And so and so that's what's going on. There's
cowardice and sort of grasping at power. So like, you know, look, I'm protecting essentially women from dangerous men in the military, so vote for me again. And one of the things that we've talked about with other guests, and I want to get your take on this as well, is that there's also like the military wants to, like, you know, do whatever it can to protect its reputation. And this is going to bring us full circle to the beginning. So they're willing to just like throw, you know, guys like you under the bus if there's a conviction, because they don't want this to like get out of hand and become like a big circus, because then it's going to make them look bad. But there's also, and I think this is the more dangerous part of it, is that there is this idea, and I think this came, it probably predates the Obama administration, but I know we were hearing about it from that time, where there was an assumption that because there are studies that claim that, you know, sexual assault happens at a high frequency, for example, on college campuses. You know, there's this claim that in the United States, 1 in every 4 women will be sexually assaulted in her lifetime. And because there is this, and the stat is bogus, by the way, but that's a whole other thing. It's a myth. But because we assume this is true, and then we look at the numbers of convictions, then there are people who do this backwards reasoning where it's like, well, the stats say this happens this much, but we're not getting these convictions, so we got to bump up the numbers of convictions to match the data. And so there are people in the military that they're just, well, why don't we just lower the standards, and then we'll increase the number of convictions, and then it'll make us look good. But it's also going to like keep us from like, you know, I don't know, potentially destroying our reputation. What do you think about that?
Well, you're right. Remember, it goes back to this is a national security issue, right? And so I call it crises. And so those same folks who I just talked about now don't want it to come back on them. But hold on. You passed these egregious policies and laws that led to this. We're going to hold you accountable, right? And so it all goes back to, not only is it a you know, they don't want to look bad. A lot of folks don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, for sure. So if if it's true that this is a national security issue, do you think that, like, I think it's for another reason too. Like, obviously, men are not going to want to enlist if this kind of shit is going on in the military. And I know that there are young men that want to be like you know, they want to be like, you know, they're patriotic. They think that it's good to that we have a strong military. So like, what would have to change to, like, you know, change that morale? And do you think that's starting to happen now that we've, like, you know, it looks like things are moving around very quickly, like now that we have Pete Hegseth in there and stuff like that?
Well, Brian, I always say the most important government official we have isn't the president, isn't members of Congress, the Senate, the Secretary of Defense. The most important government official we have, and most powerful government official we have, is an informed citizen, right? And so I want people to be made aware of what's going on, because again, if the average citizen is aware of what's going on with their service members, right? Because I think I saw a stat where during World War II, roughly 40% of the country had somebody that either served or they knew somebody. I think now it's like by maybe 10% or maybe 1% of the country, right? Has somebody who's, with 330 million people, and I think roughly 2 million people in the DOD to include civilians. So that's, you know, roughly, you know, you do the numbers, probably 1% less than that. And so that's part of the problem. Most folks just don't know. And most folks were aware of what's going on, and they'd be like, hold on, I'm not electing you to Congress to represent me when you are allowing this to go on. I want someone up there who's going to do something about this, right? And so number one is we've got to get awareness out there. Unfortunately, I could only get the One American Newses and the Fox Newses to take my story, because the CNNs, MSNBCs, those were the liberal progressive sites, and they don't want to go back towards, you know, women that are, you know, women that could potentially be lying, right? And so now that goes against their base of viewers, right? And so
absolutely,
it's more palatable. It's more palatable to say, hey, we got the wrong guy because of DNA, right? So it doesn't take away that what happened occurred. You just got the wrong guy. So you can get the CNNs, MSNBCs to report on that, because yeah, this guy was wrong. So we'll tell that story, but they don't want to tell the story that, you know, this woman lied, right? Look at the Amber Heard case, right? No,
for sure.
So it's easier to stomach in liberal media that, okay, yeah, someone was falsely accused of this, and, you know, DNA proves it wasn't him, versus this woman lied. They don't want to tell that story. You know?
No, because there is a narrative they're trying to maintain, because there's a lot of people in academia, in politics, in the media, and in general, sociology, psychology, etc., that they have to hold on to this narrative, and it is essentially a destructive narrative that men are dangerous to women in all times, at all places. And so that in order to maintain that, we gotta like do stuff like these kangaroo courts in the military, in college campuses, in the workplace, the Me Too movement, all of it. It's all off the rails and on purpose. It's not an accident. So we just have to, like, rein it in. And I think that the only way to do that is, like you said, with the informed citizen that, you know, knows what's going on and is not afraid to speak up. And I think as more regular people speak up with their voice, with their vote, whatever, then, you know, you'll see more people in the that, like, might find their spines, like, but it takes regular people to help them with that.
So no, I don't know how much time we have left, but I would say we need to go back to, so in 1969 there was a Supreme Court case called O'Callaghan, right? And O'Callaghan says the verdict on that one was that military members cannot be prosecuted for non-military related offenses, right? And so that was the land of the law. So unless it was duty related, you can't be court-martialed, right? And so the premise was, hey, let the local civilian folks, or let the, you know, local jurisdiction folks handle non-military related offenses, all right? It was called stare decisis when the Supreme Court goes back on a previous ruling. So in 1987, they overturned that 1969 O'Callaghan case, and in 1987, the case was called Solario. So Solario overturned the O'Callaghan verdict, and so in the Solario verdict, they says, well, it doesn't matter if it's military related or non-military related. a service member can be court-martialed for whatever. You know what I'm saying? And so I would like for us to go back to that O'Callaghan verdict. And the reason, and the biggest problem that you see with the 87 ruling that overturned that is there are a lot of civilian witnesses in these military court-martials, and the military court-martials don't have jurisdiction over them. So like in my case, I've got the victim, my wife lying, her mother-in-law's a civilian lying, and the dude she was sleeping with, they're all lying. Well, the military don't have any teeth to do anything, right? And so that was a problem with the 87 Supreme Court decision is they had a huge blind spot when it came to, well, what about civilian folks that are participating in these military tribunals? So I would love for the military to go back to the 1969 O'Callaghan verdict and how let's go ahead and just prosecute these cases that are only military related, duty related, versus everything else, you know?
Yeah. No, that sounds good. And that's a good thing to think about as we close out the show. But I want to thank you, Major, for coming on and telling us your story. And I included all the links. You guys got to check this out. It's crazy. And you know, we gotta, it starts with changing the people. So I hope that you all found something interesting, learned something today. And I want Clarence, if you could follow up, if you learn anything new or any new developments with your case, let us know and we'll bring you back on.
Man, look, Brian, bro, you are worth your weight in gold. I thank you. I sincerely apologize for the connectivity issues. But at least you got my silhouette with my black suit looking like a young Idris Elba right there. You know?
I know, like Black Superman over here. I was like, that's okay. This is it's idealized. This is the film version.
Yeah.
Cuba Gooding Jr. is looking good these days. Kidding. Anyway.
So in party, man, I just wanted to say thanks for having me. Thanks for Arvis for doing a lot of the legwork to reaching out to guys who want to tell our story. And look, man, we at the end of the day, man, I'm all about justice and what's right. You know, I'm not saying that bad stuff don't happen, but let's reinforce the procedures and practices that we have in place. We'll just call it the Constitution, right? Let's just follow the Constitution. I'm not trying to add more to it or take it away. The way it's written, I think is pretty good. Let's just follow it. If it says due process, then let's give folks due process, right? If it says everyone should be able to identify the witnesses against them, let's do that, right? And sometimes justice isn't sexy, but it's fair, and we need to go back to that.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for telling us your story, Major. Thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna wrap it up there. So I'll meet you all in the patron show in just a few minutes. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we talked about on the show today. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you all so much for coming on today's episode of the Fireside Chat, and we'll talk to you guys in the next video.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.